Welcome back to Wealthy Business, the channel where we break down the biggest stories in finance, global markets, and personal growth. Today we're exploring a story that sits right at the heart of the global energy transition. Norwegian oil giant Equinor stepping in with almost $1 billion to support Danish offshore wind developer Orsted, at a time when the offshore wind sector is under heavy fire from the Trump administration. This is more than just an investment headline. It's about geopolitics, the clash between fossil fuels and renewables, and the future of clean energy in a world that's moving toward, but also resisting, transition. Equinor's big bet Equinor, one of the world's largest oil and gas producers, announced it will take part in Orsted's massive 60 billion Danish krone rights issue. That's around $9.4 billion. Specifically, Equinor will put nearly $1 billion on the table, signaling two things: confidence in Orsted's long-term future despite the short-term political and financial turbulence, a clear belief that offshore wind remains competitive in the global energy mix. Equinor isn't just writing a check. It also announced it will nominate a candidate to Orsted's board of directors, tightening its influence and ensuring it has a voice in the strategic direction of the company. Orsted's struggles. Now let's zoom out. Orsted, once hailed as the global leader in offshore wind, has been facing massive headwinds. Its stock has plunged nearly 90% since 2021. Last month it hit a fresh, all-time low after the Trump administration ordered it to halt work on a nearly completed offshore wind farm. Funding has been cut. The U.S. Department of Transportation just canceled $679 million in federal support for offshore wind infrastructure. The message from Washington is clear: this administration is not friendly to wind energy. In fact, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said that federal funds should be directed instead to revitalizing America's maritime industry, calling offshore wind projects wasteful. For Orsted, this is a nightmare scenario. For Equinor, it's both a risk and an opportunity. Why Equinor is stepping in. So why would an oil company double down on offshore wind when the political winds are blowing against it? Equinor knows two things. Energy transition is inevitable. The pace might change, the politics might fluctuate, but renewables are not going away. By backing Orsted now, when its valuation is severely depressed, Equinor gains influence and potential strategic options for the future, possibly even a merger of their offshore wind portfolios, as RBC capital markets analysts have hinted. In other words, buy low, prepare for the long game. Analyst Perspectives RBC Capital Markets put it bluntly. They said Equinor's support might be the first step toward combining offshore wind assets. But there's a catch. By maintaining and even expanding its role, Equinor is also increasing exposure to U.S. offshore wind projects, and right now, political support is shaky at best. Still, Equinor now gets board representation, which analysts say is a big positive. It means they're not just passive investors, they're active participants shaping strategy in one of the most turbulent corners of the renewable energy market. Oil meets renewables. This move also highlights something bigger: the blurring of lines between traditional fossil fuel giants and renewable energy companies. Equinor is still a massive oil and gas producer, but it knows the world is changing. By supporting Orsted, it's signaling that offshore wind will remain critical to the global energy mix of the future, even if short-term politics make things messy. It's a reminder that the energy transition is not a straight line. It's a battle between old and new, between politics and economics, and between fossil fuels and clean energy. The bigger picture. Let's step back to the macro view. Offshore wind projects are capital-intensive, but they're also central to Europe's long-term energy security. The U.S., under Trump, may be pulling back support, but Europe, particularly Denmark, Norway, and Germany, continues to push aggressively. Investors are watching closely. Can Orsted, with Equinor's backing, survive the turbulence and emerge stronger? Or will political resistance slow down what once looked like an unstoppable growth story? Final thoughts. Here's the bottom line. Equinor's $1 billion support for Orsted isn't just about one company. It's about the future of offshore wind, the credibility of renewable energy, and the way big oil is hedging its bets as the world transitions. Yes, the Trump administration is throwing up roadblocks. Yes, political risks in the U.S. are high. But the sheer scale of planned renewable investment in Europe and Asia suggests offshore wind will remain a central pillar of the clean energy revolution. For investors, the question isn't if offshore wind will grow, it's when the politics will align with the economics. And when that happens, those who took the risk early may reap the biggest rewards. This is wealthy business. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next breakdown of the forces shaping global markets.